Look, put the mic to your mouth, and now we're starting the podcast.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
carry on with the story.
So, yeah, it reminded me of the story that James was told me. I can't even specify. About 70s or 80s, and bands and labels would bring in a guy whose sole job was to just use his one finger to bring the mix down on the desk. So just to fade a song or an album out.
And do you know what his name was?
What?
The Finger.
They called him the finger.
They called him the Finger. Bring in the Finger.
And he got paid like...
He got paid like 10 grand per fade down.
And he had a steady hand. Was that his whole thing?
Yeah, like you know, he was smooth. Because, you know, it was a guy with... There was no, like, you couldn't draw it in or anything to make it perfect. So this guy apparently had such a smooth fade down that he'd get paid, you know, 10 grand to just come in. And he did all the Michael Jackson stuff. He'd come in and fade down on the master, just fade down.
Yeah. Can you imagine him sort of at home, you know, maybe cooking spaghetti or at the drive-thru and the phone rings and it's like, we need the finger. And he has a glove on, like a sequins glove, you know, that he arrived.
Like an emergency for a fireman or something. You got to get down there quick. We need you. You know, there's a DFA button as well.
What's a DFA button?
Oh, this is great. This one.
So to go with the finger,
great.
there's a DFA button that when A&R men used to come into the room to go and check out the latest hits or the final album, and you'd be the band, and there would be the engineer there, like, you know, overviewing everything as it's being played, and then the A&R man would casually walk over and say, "Oh yeah, I think you need a little bit more, I don't know, reverb or something, or a bit more volume on this particular instrument." Right, this was forewarned by, you know, the band and the engineer is to have a DFA volume, an old button, and it was the do fuck all volume.
Does fuck all.
Yeah.
So the A&R guy would be sat at the back of the studio and like, you turn up the vocal a bit, and the engineer would be like, yeah, sure, and he'd go to the DFA fader
every time
and move it around a bit.
So just to appease the
Just
A&R.
to appease, yeah, but because it's, you know, he'd sit there and he'd go, oh yeah, that's better, and nothing's happened.
These
know?
are great
It's just in his
details.
mind, he thought that he's helped in some way.
It's great.
When he hasn't.
And it got to a stage where they needed to obviously invent this button because so many A&Rs needed to feel like they were.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it was called the DFA button, the DFA fader.
Great.
And it does fuck all. Doesn't do anything.
You're like
But these amateurs. Let's
See,
call
these
them.
were the details that I wanted to see in vinyl and HBO, and it just wasn't there. You know, it's those kind of details that only...
I didn't. Did I watch one episode? I think I might have watched one episode of that.
It was truly disappointing.
vinyl.
Yeah.
The problem with the problem
Carol, you want to stay up close to that mic
really is it a tough
because
one?
it's not like this.
Oh right, okay,
It's like a.
okay.
You got to be close to it.
Okay. The problem with vinyl is that it had details of sorts. It was almost like you could tell it was written by like from an artist's perspective. Some of the times, it was, you know, Mick Jagger, wasn't it? He was involved
He
in it.
produced it.
He was a producer,
Written
wasn't he?
by Terence Winter, who wrote a lot of episodes of Sopranos and wrote Wolf of
So
Wall Street.
What happened then?
Hey, listen, you know, it was a
Because it was Martin Scorsese as well, right?
yeah, it was Martin Scorsese. It was a very self-indulgent piece, I think, because infamously music shows as television shows don't really work. I mean, Empire and that other hip hop show,
Chicks Like Girls.
they have done their numbers and do very well. But as a rule, musicians and artists love music shows, but the public couldn't give a fuck because they're never done properly.
Yeah.
There's a few great music films. I mean, Spinal Tap being the obvious one. Almost Famous is a very good film. You ever seen that?
Oh yeah.
That's a good film.
Yeah.
There's a lot of. It's a good subject to tell a story in. But I think with this,
Parodies are good.
parodies are
Like
always
some people
good.
do nothing. It's arguably a music related, you know,
Yeah.
point of view, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's brilliant, and that has you know, you'd think after The Office, the success of The Office, mockumentaries would have become, you know, cliched, but actually they've shown that they can still work, and I think Some People Just Do Nothing is a good example of that. I mean, I think they need to wrap it up probably at the next series because they're all famous enough now. And, yeah, and it's brilliant and it's funny, but I want to see it clipped off and bookended.
My thing is now they're doing shows, and like 2,000 people are showing up to see him. That's when it starts to get like who's the Welsh band? Gold Looking Chain.
Yeah.
The joke starts to not be a joke anymore.
Yeah.
Because
And
it's
then,
like, well, now this is serious.
That's right.
And that was not the point of the joke.
Yeah. It becomes the Monkeys, doesn't it? Like all of a sudden, it's like they literally override the motives in which they were starting this thing for, and they make their journey. They made it. It's happened.
Yeah, they become a parody.
You got to sign off.
If they go any further,
Yeah.
they start to become a parody
Sure, right.
of themselves.
And I think it's knowing in anything, in any kind of artistic situation, when to bow out. It's a brilliant thing to be able to do. And so actually, that's why Stephen Merchant has done so brilliant, because he just stepped away.
Yeah,
and was
and
like,
Gervais is fucked up.
Gervais has carried on, and it hasn't carried. It's
Yeah.
lost its shine, and he hasn't. As you say, David Brent has now become a caricature of himself.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
the
yeah.
magic has gone. Whereas, as we were talking the other day, Partridge has managed to keep it funny. He's been very clever. He's kept a core team of writers around him that worked on the original shows.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
shows in the writing, because it's not just one writer hacking away. It's like several people who love the character, know the character, and then it's just placing him in different
Yeah,
situations.
you can bring a new dimension to him.
Sometimes I find with Steve Coogan is that he falls into the character of Alan Partridge quite naturally, because it's actually part of his demeanour. It's actually, to a point, I think it's all of us. But when he carries it off outside of the character, it's hard to just like put it into a box of, well, that's Alan Partridge, that's you for then, because it's quite ingrained in him, isn't it? It appears.
What, you mean him?
The Alan Partridge character,
Steve.
the mannerisms and things like that. Yes, in Steve.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. I watched Steve Coogan. What was that fucking?
I need to check the chips, boys. Keep going.
Okay. What was that news thing that happened a couple of years ago? The inquiry.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the
Remember
phone
that
hacking.
after the whole phone hacking thing?
Yeah.
And he.
The Leveson inquiry.
Yeah, that was it. And
Leveson.
he had to testify in that, right? And he went out, and I watched it. I watched him do his testify thing. And, like, I'd say 50% of that was Alan Partridge.
Yeah,
But it's just Steve Coogan being still Steve Coogan.
that's what I'm saying.
But, there's so much Steve Coogan in Partridge.
yeah.
Like, I can't remember, there's one bit where he says about, like, I can't remember what he says, but it's so Partridge. It's like, oh my God, like, that might as well be a Partridge sketch, but it's just Steve Coogan being himself, sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I think
absolutely.
that you need to, but it's the difference between Coogan and Partridge is probably quite a thin line, and so that's why it works so well. But he's very self-aware, and he's used that well, I think, because I don't know if you've seen The Trip. Have you seen The Trip?
Yes, that's right.
Very
yeah.
funny.
Yeah,
I watched
yeah,
a new one, The Trip to Spain. It's very funny, and they're playing themselves, and they're taking the piss out of themselves, and it works, and it's endearing, and it's strangely poignant, and it's droll, and it's funny. And he's a good writer. He wrote Philomena, which won an Oscar with Judi Dench. He just wrote that shit. And I think that shows an artist that is growing and is still funny and has had to probably, carry the cross of Alan Partridge his whole life. But there's worse crosses to carry.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
You're a comic god.
And it lives on. It lives while he's not doing it. It lives on. It's just part of
Yeah.
the tapestry of the
British comedy and
yeah.
worldwide comedy. So what's your comedy Mount Rushmore? If you've got 4 faces on Mount Rushmore, right, what's your... That's a tough one,
But
right?
I think we're all going to be in the same area.
All right, I'll
We're gonna
kick
be
it off.
insane.
I'm going to go Steve Coogan.
Right.
I'm going to go Richard Pryor. I'm going to go...
Okay.
I'm going to go Bill Hicks. And I'm going to go probably Eddie Murphy.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's my Mount Rushmore.
Wait,
Of
are we talking
comedy-
about comedians
I
as well?
reckon anyone who's just fucking funny in a
All right.
public eye.
Yeah, Richard Pryor, definitely.
Yeah.
I think Bill Burr is fucking awesome.
Bill Burr's great. He's a pioneer.
Gary Shandling,
Who's that?
Larry Sanders.
Right.
What's that, 3?
Yeah.
Steve Martin, I think, is fucking funny. When Steve Martin was on fire, a lot of people call him like, oh, Dad's comedian now. Dude, when that guy was funny, he was funny.
He was a pathfinder, man. He was
Yeah.
truly a pathfinder.
Which one's he?
Steve Martin,
Martin.
The Jerk.
Plane, Trains and Automobiles.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Father of the
That's
Bride.
right.
He
Yeah,
was
that's right, yeah.
really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
4.
That's a strong. Yeah, 4. That's your 4. What
Was
about
that
you?
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think there's only 4 on Mount
There was
Rushmore.
a guy from the 80s, I forget his name. Big guy, long hair. Like that.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Oh, Billy Bob. No, Bobcat.
No.
The guy that's in Police Academy. Oh, I know who you're talking about. Shit.
Died.
Yeah, he died in a car crash or something.
Yeah, sober.
Yeah, and he was an alcoholic.
He was
and
an
he
alcoholic.
Got sober and then died in a car crash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Tough call, man. Yeah, I forgot his name. I can't remember.
I know the guy you
know
mean,
who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's going to kill me. George Carlin.
Oh, fuck, I forgot Carling.
So,
George
Bill Hicks.
Carling. Oh, God,
Hicks
Bill
up there.
Hicks.
Yeah, I put
Burr,
Hicks up there.
definitely
You've got to put Hicks up
Burr.
there.
And Burr, I think, yeah.
Bill Burr's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So no Brits for either of you.
British comedians.
Who would be your British comedian on Mount Rushmore?
I've got 2 British comedians that I love, and there's Eddie Izzard.
Yeah.
And this, like, a lot of people go, really? But he's fucking incredible.
He's very funny.
Oh, the one that sweats all the time?
Lee Evans.
Lee Evans.
Oh, Lee Evans is amazing.
Lee Evans is fucking
Interesting.
funny,
Yeah,
man.
right,
Yeah, a lot of people go like, "What? He's like a fucking Chavs fucking comedian."
Right.
Like, dickheads love him.
No, but he's funny.
It's
yeah.
like, dude, that guy is fucking funny.
Yeah. I wouldn't put him. I wouldn't.
That's
have
like trying to explain to a muso that the Darkness are really good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I
It's
guess
like,
so,
no,
I
the
guess.
Darkness are a great fucking band.
Yeah.
Oh no, they're not. They're fucking.
No, they're fucking
End of
awesome.
the Pier
No,
band.
they're
It's
an
like,
amazing
no,
band.
they're a fucking great band.
That's interesting about the Darkness. I wouldn't have seen that from the outside looking in. And you're absolutely right about Lee Evans. He is fucking formidable. He's a physical comedian. There's Chaplin in there. There's Norman, what's his face, that old school comedian.
Oh, yeah,
There's
Norman
a lot-
Wisdom.
Norman Wisdom's a lot of Tommy Cooper in there. But
Yeah.
he's sharp with his gags.
I'll
He's
tell
funny.
you what. I've got a good comedian from England, Bob Monkhouse, man.
Yeah,
I used
yeah,
to
Bob
love
Monkhouse is
Bob
great.
That's proper
Monkhouse.
old
Do you know-
school.
no, wait,
Wink
wait.
at the
Old school.
Do you know
camera.
the best Bob Monkhouse joke?
Go on.
He said, when I was a kid, I told people I wanted to be a comedian. They used to laugh at me. Yeah? Well, they're not laughing now.
True.
It's good, isn't it?
Can you get us a refill on our whiskey there, Biggles? Because someone's kicked my over. Huh?
Someone kicked your whiskey over.
Yeah, come on, somebody kicked
You should
me.
explain to the listeners exactly what we're doing right now, because they have no clue.
Right, it's 2018. This is the Killa Kela podcast. I am here with my 2 dearest of friends, because I thought I'd kick it off the appropriate way, in the most comfortable and settled environments possible with 2 of my closest, with Alex Childs, scriptwriter. And, well, I mean, how do you define your talent? I mean, it's like, it's big, 6 inches. It's set 12 inches, so it's, all the hand gestures are happening.
Higher, lower, lower.
It's good, but it's not right.
His resume is incredible, and for 2018, it's only going to get bigger, larger, and more wealthier. It's Alex Child, scriptwriter. And then to the right of me currently is James Rushent, producer extraordinaire, originally producer for Does It Offend You? Was originally my sound engineer for a good 4 or 5 years. Lucky for me, yeah. So it depends which side of the fence you're on. And then went on, he's now currently with the Mad
Big time.
Decent, Major
Big time.
Laser
Big
Camp,
time stuff, yeah.
collaborating with Prodigy, Biffy Clyro. I mean, you name it. He's out there. So anyway, here's the ethos. Here's the mission brief. These are 2 artists in their own field, heavily developed and refined in their craft, and I'm getting under the hood of what makes them tick creatively, inspirationally, and or otherwise. You like all that?
And what we doing right now?
We are currently sitting in a.
And wait, what's the date first?
No, we don't talk. We don't.
Yeah,
talk,
where are we?
we don't talk about dates because we want to try and keep it within next year. So we're not going to say.
Oh,
the
next
date.
year's not good. Well,
That's good. That's
Okay, all right.
Crime songs, they always do that. They say 2000.
Oh, yeah, and it ruins it.
And then you listen to it 3 years later.
yeah, and you're like, well, that's out of date. Yeah.
So you don't need to know the date, ladies and gentlemen, but the truth be known, we are in a beautiful location just outside of Reading in a place called Pangbourne. Actually, one of the original places where Led Zeppelin first met. And
True.
just up the road is Kate Bush, wasn't it?
She's moved now, but she used to live just up the road.
In the Berkshire Hills.
Your listeners are now going, okay, first of all, who the fuck is Kate Bush? Second of all, who the fuck is Led Zeppelin?
yeah. And where the fuck is Pangbourne?
Wiley once came through.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Killa Kela had a stint here in the local youth centres. But listen, this is the most humblest.
And where the fuck is Pangbourne?
So yes, we're in a comfortable environment around Alex's house at the moment, just chopping up with a nice punch cigar or 3, and
and as well, I think it needs to be said that you know, we talk all the time. Us three talk all the time.
Yeah.
Almost every day. Well, every day.
Every day. It's an AM FM radio.
Yeah, exactly.
So at any one point, somebody will be talking, disclosing something about their day.
On WhatsApp.
Exactly.
WhatsApp talking about.
We do audio messages on WhatsApp pretty much constantly.
So what could be better than my first podcast being with two of my closest pals, talking exactly the way we do, having a chilled time
on WhatsApp.
Yeah, and opening the doors into a world and let other people hear it.
Yeah.
So let us begin.
Podcast.
So we're smoking a couple of big cigars, which
Yeah.
you got into a couple of months ago
Through Kela.
through Kela.
Yeah.
Well, was it a couple? It was longer than.
What's the genesis of the
So,
cigars?
I mean, it was a little bit before last year. What happened was I had these shoddy like tobacco ones, and every time something great would happen, I'd pull out these. You know, they weren't all that, but you know, it was just like a celebratory thing. And you know, you did the last Does It Offend You Yeah gig, and then before that, you had spent the evening with Liam and Alex and that, wasn't it? And you came back to my place and we had Only Fools and Horses, which is a comedy program over here in England. And you know, we were just smoking away. And there was a few moments like this where you know, we defined having a cigar as being
a thing.
But
they weren't Cuban cigars.
They weren't Cuban. Then I go to LA. Then I start smoking the Cuban ones, and I come back here and I have them for my birthday and a couple of other special events, and then I brought one round for the fight that
Right, McGregor, Mayweather a couple of months ago.
And that's where it crystallised. James Rushent suddenly became invested.
And so they've now become synonymous with Dan Buster's meetups and also with just
Pretty
moments
much.
of general, you know, needing to wind down and just reflect on life.
I'm on to like Friday night.
Friday night
I
night.
have a little ritual where I'll drive into Reading. I'll go into the arcade, and there's a little tobacco shop there that sells proper. They got a humidor and they sell proper Cuban cigars.
Can I just intervene here? Right, so he's been going back and forth there, and he goes, "Oh, they let me in the humidor yesterday."
Sorry, what's a humidor?
So, like, to make sure that the cigars stay moist, you have to keep them at a certain temperature and humidity. Otherwise, they dry out and they crack.
Right.
And they're unsmokable. So you have a humidor which is kept at the right humidity. All the cigars are put in the humidor.
And it's like a tank.
It's like a
garden. It's like a greenhouse.
Like a shed,
Is it like an incubator?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Really dry.
Yeah, and they just keep them at the right humidity and the right temperature, so they don't dry out. So it's like, you know, because you can buy them, you can get them sometimes, you'll light them, and you'll start to see the leaves start to crack all the way down.
Right.
And then the outer leaf will peel off, and that's when they haven't been kept correctly.
Yeah.
And it's big time.
And what are the new ones? I remember the new ones. they had a number after them. I remember you told me.
Check this out. So he went in there, and for the first time, he was like, "I could go in the humidor. They let me in the humidor." And I said to him, "Dude, you're paying half the rent."
Yeah, he's putting their kids through college.
I'm spending like £100 a weekend.
Yeah.
But
a week.
These are the little luxuries in life that we afford ourselves because
we work really fucking hard, and then at the end of the week we go, do you know what? I'm going to blow fucking 30, 40 quid on a cigar.
I'll say this much though. I wouldn't enjoy it without an event or someone to share it with.
Yes. Here's the thing about cigars, because I smoke them on my own, right? And I remember I'd go outside and I'd just sort of have a cigar, and it's nowhere near as good.
Right.
If you're on your own.
So it's a communal thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When
totally.
I can't
like
afford
right now.
when I can't afford one, he's like, no, I'll get you one. Because not only
I'm not going to smoke a cigar on my own.
and not only does he appreciate that I appreciate it, and there's a value in having someone else doing it, but it's like once you get into the rhythm of it, it almost becomes a signature of like, yeah, I've had a good week. I've had a good week.
Sure.
You know, so you share.
I haven't masturbated all week.
Yeah,
I haven't smoked a cigar. I haven't drunk.
Exactly.
I've been running every day.
Exactly.
I've been putting my hours in at work, cold showers, and now I'm gonna have a nice fucking cigar.
That's right.
Because in movies, obviously, we're used to seeing Clint Eastwood. Remember the old school ones they have in the Sergio Leone films? Then they look really tatty and hand rolled and wet, but you still want to smoke them because
I've actually now got into chewing the end of my cigar.
Right.
It's taken a while, but I now understand.
You see, I like people who smoke in films and TV, right? There's certain actors who are
Absolutely.
really good smokers on screen. It's an art. A lot of people, they won't inhale, and you pick up on that.
Dude, I remember when Dan Aykroyd had the cigarette leaning out of his mouth when he saw Slime.
Oh, and Ghostbusters, yeah.
Right.
That was it, man.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I tell you who's the king smoker on screen is John Travolta. That man knows how to smoke on screen. From the lighter to the movement to the puff to the cloud to the way he
I'm
holds.
trying to think of
Pulp
episode.
Fiction. Think of Pulp Fiction when he's in the diner and they're lighting the cigarettes. He smokes in a lot of his movies, and it's a real art form. Clint Eastwood.
God, now you're saying I can't think of him having a cigarette.
Yeah.
Cigar-wise, though, the Black Sergeant from
Predator.
Aliens.
Aliens.
Oh, aliens! Hudson, come here! Come here!
Don.
Yeah. I tell you who else? Hannibal out of A-Team.
Oh my god.
Oh, yeah.
He used to chew his cigars.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, yes.
He used to chew his cigars.
He did, yeah.
And that's where I started thinking about it. I was like, why did he chew his cigars? And then I started I didn't chew him like he did, but I started giving them the odd wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, you
And
tried
then it
to
was
explain
oh
yourself, mate.
shit. Something happens when you do that. You
What
suddenly,
happens? What happens?
It's like suddenly there's no barrier between you and the cigar. You know, before then it's like there's your mouth and there's the cigar. And you take your puff and you put it out again and that's it. But then when you start chewing it, suddenly they're like...
I mean, it's almost an act of love, isn't it?
Yeah,
because
it's
you're
like
growing
it's one.
closer to being at one with the
You're
sort of
at one with this
experience of
object.
smoking, right?
Yeah, it's a journey. Having a cigar is a journey.
And it's
What's it
obviously
like?
a rush as well. You're going to be getting endorphins. You're going to be getting a massive nicotine hit.
and stuff like that. So there's a
That's
bit of
interesting.
that. But for me, it's it just you get these labels on cigars, right? Now the way I see it, sometimes you'll get two labels like this,
And you don't want that. You don't want that.
And I view it as I'll keep on the label until I start to get into the golden zone, and then I view taking the label off as taking a girl's dress off. It's I'm now going to get the cigar naked, because we're about to go to town. We're hitting the golden zone.
All those peeling of
beautiful.
labels on bottles. It soon pays off.
It's beautiful. I love it. I mean, who would have thought that just a simple process of smoking a cigar could actually have so many layers to it? I like that.
Oh, there's so many layers to it.
So is there a sort of,
It's not
there must be
just smoking a cigar.
yeah, there must be cigar club enthusiasts,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
people who love beards and people who love
Yeah.
fucking microbreweries
Yeah,
and
totally.
shit.
Mm.
Cigars club where they all meet
Yeah,
up. I bet they
totally.
know their shit as well, you know.
And this is where I think I've been. The guys in the cigar shop that I go and get my cigars from have now gone. Okay, this guy is.
He's coming to age.
He's not a tourist.
He's coming of age.
He's not a tourist.
That's right.
He's and this is why they go let me go out the back and get you some
Right.
fucking real cigars.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's
But you've had to go through a couple of visits before
I've had to
they
I've had to
realise.
spend fucking 600 quid in their shop before they go. This guy's
Yeah, an enthusiast
he's an
beyond.
enthusiast.
An
Legit.
aficionado.
Yeah, he likes the
The,
cigar.
the wolf is in the building.
Yeah, so they showed me how to cut them correctly.
That's badass.
All this stuff.
That's badass.
Yeah, they were like, "This is the cutter you want. This
Yeah.
is the really good cutter."
Jack Nicholson, he could smoke a cigar.
Oh yeah,
That guy
yeah.
sits front row at the Oscars with
With a
Ray-Bans
fucking
on
cigar.
and a cigar. Awesome.
I mean, it's changed a lot, hasn't it? The way people perceive people who smoke, especially indoors and in. I hear there's a particular license you've got to have as an artist when you're on stage. You've got to be given approval to use the cigarette as a theatrical piece and things like that. Even in
I've heard
clubs,
that, yeah.
you know.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, but there was a time where I remember when the smoking ban happened in raves and clubs, and you'd almost smell what someone's just eaten in one exit or another. It was just horrific. You didn't realise what was underneath the smog of smoke.
Yeah. BO.
Yeah.
You suddenly
It's
smell
horrible.
the BO in clubs.
On
and
women.
stuff.
You know?
See,
It's like,
millennials don't know anything about this.
So this is exactly it. They don't know anything about it. I remember there was a turning point where you and I, we did a gig. For those who don't know, Kella and I performed as many years. Kella and Trip, Alex and Lee, Delicately.
Yeah, MC Trip. MC Trip was by far one of the most aspiring MCs, and could continue to do so if he did so wish.
Wow.
Anyway, and we'll get into that later. We'll definitely get into that later.
The point being that we did a gig, and it was at a club, and it was in Elephant and Castle. It might have been that big one in Elephant and Castle. What's the big venue in Elephant and Castle?
Coronet.
The Coronet. And we showed up there, and we did a jump up. And afterwards, and just as a side note, we grew up in the era where raves were raves, free parties were free parties, smoking, you could smell crack, you could smell sweat, you could smell joints, you could smell, like, it was a beautiful thing, a beautiful environment to be in. And so having come through that era, you and I, we did this gig in Elephant and Castle, and I walked into like room 2, and it was the dubstep room. And there must have been 600-700 teenagers, okay? Every single one of them with their phones held up. Bear in mind, this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, with their phones held up. And you could see completely through the crowd. You know, there was no smoke that felt like it should be in a rave, in a party. The danger, the sense of danger had completely gone, right? Because that's what I used to love about parties. Going out, dangerous. You never knew what was going to happen. You never know where you were going to go. You didn't know what drugs you were going to take. You didn't know what was going to happen. But nowadays, it's so sterilized that for me hooked me in the fucking jaw, because, as you rightly point out, millennials, they will never get to go through, you know, punk. It was our punk era. And it's a shame that they won't have that.
I'll tell you what it is. Oh, shit. I'll tell you what it is. I think it's one of those things of, it will happen again. At some point, a youth movement will happen again that just scares everyone. Even the adults. At the moment, for us, we look back at the kids now, who you know, kids in their like 19, 18, who are doing it. Oh, well, there you go. And it's not scary in the slightest. It's like, well, guys, like, you're meant to be freaking us out. You're meant to be keeping us on our toes, and it's not happening.
But I've got a theory on that, and I think I've expressed this to you guys before. The average 17-year-old now was born of a terrorist era. 9/11 had happened.
Post 9/11.
Yeah. It was, you know. So
see, I remember a world when there wasn't any
that
terrorism.
Right? Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. So these kids have grown up on things like Good Charlotte and what's his name? Fred Durst, whatever his name is, and
Limp Bizkit
and Red Bull, and terrorism's everywhere. And now Donald Trump's in, and it's almost like more numbing of the brain. Like, I kind of feel for them in a way, because they're literally a product of a pretty heavy environment that even us, knowing the ins and outs, a little bit more clearer for our age, we're thinking, right.
I tell you where we differ. We're old enough now. We're not old, but we're old enough to have seen the cycle once or twice.
It's cyclical. It's totally cyclical. And it'll come back around. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
it will come back around, and it'll come out of nowhere, and it'll be something special, and it'll be something dangerous. And it'll have and it'll have something new that we never had, and it will evolve. But in this current no man's land, there's nothing.
Like, this is the thing. Even when people go, "Well, grime, that's like the punk." Like, how can you say that hasn't happened when we have grime? I'm sorry, grime for me happened in 2005.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
this it already happened.
I agree. I fucking agree.
It already fucking happened. This whole thing now of like, well, there's grime. It's like, that happened over 10 years ago.
That's your grime. If
that's your grime.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, this has happened.
Yeah,
this happened already.
Exactly. And it came and it went.
Yeah.
And then it's come back again. And suddenly it's like, this is the first time any of us.
Because the kids that was watching on Channel U suddenly grew up, and they love the nostalgia of Channel U, so therefore they bring up the people that they were watching at the time.
Yeah. But still, it's still for like, you know, there's some people out there that think Stormzy is the first black guy to ever come from the streets and make it.
Right.
And it's like, no. There's been many, many, many before.
Yeah, of course. Tricky was doing it in the 90s.
Tricky, yeah. Dude, but like London Posse, Supreme and Hijack,
right.
Like, it goes way back. But in a nutshell, Dizzy Rascal, he set precedents for so much stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Along.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And the very fact, here's what pisses me off as well. The very fact that now Radio 1 have fallen back in love with Wiley, but yet still won't touch Dizzy Rascal, is a fucking insult. I'm sorry, but that's a fucking insult. Okay, you know, Wiley and Dizzy were around at the same time, but Dizzy did far more to push black music in England than Wiley. Wiley did it on the underground.
Yeah, Wiley did it first scene.
Wiley did it on the underground.
Wiley did it first scene, yeah. I agree.
And Dizzy took it overground.
Yeah.
But for the fact that Radio 1 won't play Dizzy, because he's seen as like a what they called historical act or whatever the fuck they call him.
Oh god. No.
You know what I mean? That
Even though his new material by, I think he's had some good songs in the last few years.
He's done some
Some
great
people
shit.
say his new material doesn't reflect, what he broke through with, which is it's never going to, because he invented a sound, he came up with a sound, he took hold of a sound that was bubbling, and he produced an incredible record. His first album.
I haven't heard any of his new stuff.
But the new stuff, the poppier, hookier, more radio-friendly Ibiza theme stuff.
Yeah.
Could
But wait a minute. Didn't Stormzy just do a Little Minx record?
Yes.
Minx.
So what the fuck's what's the problem?
But
then Radio 1 should stop playing Stormzy.
Yeah, but as well as more than anyone what radio pluggers and how station managers operate.
Yeah,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? So like,
give me a fuckload of coke and some money, and I'll play whatever the fuck you want.
Exactly.
And what's more is like we're not advocating their support of Stormzy. What we're saying is more people.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying don't
go.
Exactly.
I mean, you got to also look at it from their point of view, right? These guys, they do come from low-income neighborhoods. They come from underprivileged backgrounds, and they have a talent which separates them from others. They catch a few breaks. They work hard. Right time, right place. And from their point of view, if someone says, "Look, we're going to do a song with Little Mix. That's going to get you the house, or that's going to get you the next car, and you want to buy your sister and your mum a house."
Yeah, but the thing about Stormzy, which is the one thing that's been championed so much, is that he did it on his own. So he has no label to answer to. He all this sort of stuff, and it's sort of like, okay, well, if you're, he's got to this point where he has everyone's attention, and he's done it all his own, and he's come from nothing, and it's like, well, then why would you jump? Why would you make that jump? Why?
So why do you think he made that jump?
I can tell you why.
Do you think it's the label? Do you think it's management?
No.
Do you think it's money?
I can tell you why that is. I think because nowadays the moral bar. On artists
selling out,
it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist anymore.
And I think that's a good thing in part because a lot of artists are independent, innit?
Yeah. But like when we were growing up, there were rules in the artistic community, which was on the underground and all that, which was like, look, as long as you're true to your craft and you're real, you can go as you can do some incredible things, and you have some what's the word, integrity about it. You can become a classic artist.
But here's the thing.
But if you sell your soul,
to the man, well then everything like Bill Hicks says, everything that comes out of your mouth is now suspect. Because who are you working for?
Well hold on.
I
agree with you in part there. When I was doing the Killa Kela stuff at early days, we talk about the whole push-pull and the reasons why. Every time I did something commercial, which I did a shit ton, I did a lot of commercial stuff, especially in the early noughties, But my reasons why were because I felt it was reaching out to a bigger group of people that would be into beatboxing, and that has really, that was always the catalyst for getting beatbox out there into the public domain. Now, I'm not saying that that's probably the reasons why Stormzy does it, but I think there's an argument that he wants to show the generation to come that you can do anything and you can push the boundaries on what it is that
that's a positive way of looking at it.
That's a positive way of looking at it. I think that it will come down to the individual a lot of the time, because you never really know someone's situation, right?
Yeah, no, totally.
And so it comes a point where those conversations happen. And money is obviously talked about. These guys aren't fools, they're not. They're not fools. They have the originality to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think
if
it comes
down.
Stormzy
stood there and it's like, look,
yeah,
if you show up for half an hour and do fucking a verse, they're going to pay you 150 grand.
Yeah, and he's like,
and
you know
like,
what?
I'm from the streets.
Yeah.
150 grand for half an hour?
Yeah.
I'm fucking in.
I
don't
know
give a
I'm good
shit.
enough to get the approval of the underground, and he did. You know that Shut Up video, him in a car park surrounded by 20 people, an old beat, and he just that was
he
it.
just nailed it, yeah.
However many 70 million hits it's got, and so I think it comes down to the situation. But I think what it leans into is a bigger, more interesting discourse, which is about where labels stand now, right? And if that's all fucking changing, how is it changing? Because a lot of people are saying now with the arrival of Spotify and everything digital that the labels are getting squeezed out.
Oh, mate, no, they're not. They never will.
So will the labels always have sway because they can tell the stations what to play and they can push
Absolutely.
the artists in the place that they want?
They own, like, Universal has a huge stake in Spotify.
Like, don't think
They
for a
owned
second.
a lot of
Don't think for a
You know what I mean?
second that
Right.
they will always be in there. They'll always be in there. You know, but, and I said this to James the other day. We were talking about Spotify, and he, you know, if you don't mind me saying, he's thinking about releasing some new material, and he was concerned about, like, you had a few tunes that you were like, oh, I don't know if I want to release them because they're a bit drive, a little bit chromio, a little bit kind of synthy, and I don't know there's an audience for that. And my reaction to that was, dude, there's more people on earth than ever. There's more portals in which you'll garner an audience.
No, right, okay.
You'll feel Scala, you'll feel the
No,
academies.
no, right. My manager, right, who I love to bits. He's been there, he's done it. Do you know what I mean? He was head of A&R at fucking Warner Brothers. He's the man, right? You know, he was explaining to me, like, dude, the business has changed so much. Like, he was like, I went and saw a band the other day at some big venue in London, and he's like, no one in the business has ever heard of them, and they've sold out like the Scala or something, and he's like, that's never happened. Like, this shit is totally new to everyone. Like, a band can become a cottage industry and earn a living before they're even signed, before anyone knows who they are.
But can they disappear twice as fast?
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
Right.
totally.
Like, there's some bands that I'm into.
Because they, you know, to get to the next level, to get to the masses, well, that's a whole. You still have to go through the major label process. You know, you still have to get on Radio 1, or in England anyway, or you still have to get onto college radio in America, and that involves, you know.
So
money.
can a cult band make a decent living in today's music climate?
No, they can't make a decent living. They can't make a decent living.
Band, artist.
They can't make a decent living. Not really. You know, unless something like well, we're talking about two different things here. We're talking about a band, and bands, like, go through the top 40 and count me the amount of bands
Okay.
that are in the
One
charts.
if you're lucky.
One if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And I'm not
The Killers, or
yeah,
it's...
no, and I'm not talking like Imagine Dragons. Like, they're not a fucking band. You know, oh yeah, they have a drum kit on stage and a guitarist and a bass player. They're not a fucking band. There's a one writer in that band. The rest of them are fucking session musicians. Do you know what I mean? It's like, no. But I'm talking about real bands like Arctic Monkeys. 4 kids that started off in a garage and then went and recorded an album. They don't exist anymore. So life for them, for real bands, it's still really, really tough.
But there are a few exceptions to the rule out there. I would say Bon Iver. You know, there's like 6 of them in the band. I'd say Sigur Rós. You know, there's like a couple of them doing
but
it.
Cigar Ross has been going since fucking the 90s.
And Bon Iver, you know,
And
since the
it's-
noughties. So it's like, but those guys, I suppose, are they still? They're still funded and published by major labels, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they're able to operate, because, like, the backline on a band like that is just, you know, every guitar tech and every drum tech and every person that's carrying a speaker, you know, like bands used to be supported by labels, but in their advances and their tour supports to allow, you know, it's like invest your money into that and then get the return on the gig, get the return on the record sales. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't exist anymore. So therefore, the bands. That's why you're going to get, like, the
Look, think of it like this. Let's say that there was a new band that were, 17 years old, and there was 3 of them, and they could all play their instruments really very well, and they could write really, really good songs. And then take a rapper who's got tattoos all over his face, takes fucking what's the big drug now? Lean or whatever it is, and has his hair all funny, but can't rap for shit, but can sort of do that thing.
Mumble rap.
Who's going to get more attention? Straight away. It's going to be the mumbling, talentless fucking fool with tattoos all over his face.
Which is an interesting segue insofar as they're now saying that music, i.e. the taking drugs music, so mumble rap, Chief Keef, you know, that Chicago drill, slurry rap, all the lyrics about popping Molly and sipping lean and smoking blunts, that is now a scene. And I heard someone say, so I think it was Raekwon said, you know, we came from the era where we rapped about fucking selling drugs. Oh, now it's the era.
Mad Skills.
Mad
Skills. Yeah, that's right.
For people, you know, of rappers rapping about taking drugs.
Yeah.
Who are the addicts?
But the same time,
it's great. It's not great, but it's apt and it's you know.
But I will
there's an irony to it.
I will say at the same time, the kind of stuff that I'm into now, the newer stuff, is a lot more aggressive, and it comes from a SoundCloud place. It comes from an independent place. It's got more. It's like MOP, Onyxy. It's horror. It's aggressive rap. You know.
Yeah, but wait a minute. You still right? But here's the other thing as well. That because you know I come across a lot of music that's aggressive, right? Let's take horror for instance, which I know you're into, and that's cool.
Sorry, define horror for.
They're okay. So they're like a sort of rap rock. Thing.
Right. I guess it is like MOP meets Bad Brains meets
Slaves. Now here's the thing: you can be heavy. You can be heavy, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of heavy acts out there, but at the same time, you still have to be good.
This is producer talk, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. We're now entering the producer world of.
Okay,
details.
so let's take for instance Rage Against the Machine. Okay. That band is were extremely heavy when they came out. Which 92 that fucking band came out.
Yeah.
And they're doing Fuck You, I Won't Do You Tell Me. So we're coming out of the 80s, which was all sort of, you know, right-wing, fucking conformist society and all that. And they've gone and done Fuck You, I Won't Do You Tell Me. And the music's heavy and all this stuff. But the tunes are fucking incredible. You know, they're noisy, they're loud, they're fucking political, they're fuck you, they're all this. But yet the tunes are so fucking catchy. They're like pop songs.
Yeah.
They're like pop songs done by a fucking death metal band.
Every mum and dad's nightmare.
Right.
You know?
So what I'm saying nowadays, what I hear is that there's the sort of death metal part of it, but there's nothing catchy about it. It's just shouting for the sake of shouting.
I think a lot of
and this might be like old man talk.
No,
do you know what I mean?
No,
but I'm just saying that if you're going to be heavy, that's fine. Be heavy, but you got to understand that to get people's attention, they have to remember it, and they have to be like, I'm in it. There's something in there.
Right. That makes sense.
That draws me in.
And that's the argument about the whole band ethos of writing.
It's like
and rappers, you know, because rappers don't always. Rappers, especially in the mid-90s, was like fuck a hook, fuck a chorus, and that then transcends into modern punk, modern rock, and what happens is.
Well, wait a minute. Who are the ones that were fuck a hook, fuck a chorus? Because all the rappers that I know from the 90s that are still around had hooks and choruses.
MOP. Actually,
MOP?
I'm not MOP. Mobb Deep. Mobb Deep was in fact, Prodigy from Mobb Deep he did a song called "Fuck a Chorus," wasn't it?
Yeah, Skinny Man did "Fuck the Hook."
Fuck the Hook.
Like a 6-minute rant.
That's the one.
But I'm saying like I'm not taking away anything from Skinny Man. I'm not taking away from any of these people who decided, you know what, fuck the formula. I'm not taking away anything from them because there's some bands that I love. White Noise from the 60s, one of the most influential bands that I can think of, who broke every single rule they could possibly get their hands on. And I think they're timeless bands. So I'm not knocking it. I'm just talking about
There's a formula.
There's a formula which some people survive with. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm using Rage Against the Machine again as an example, but there's a band that technically shouldn't have survived, yet they have. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was
because the
attitude.
songs were so good.
But it was it's an attitude. I mean, when you talk about Rage Against the Machine, you're talking in terms of longevity. There's probably, outside of the fans that love and adore them, or people that are from a rock rap genre of its time, you're only really talking of maybe one or two songs that have acted as reaches to be like, well, you can play that in there anytime and it'll close down an academy. You know, fuck you, ain't doing me. Tell me he's been banned from a lot of playlists in a lot of venues because it just incites a lot of aggro. You know, but here's the thing with a lot of these bands now, the nowadays ones.
That's what's meant.
That's not a
what
bad
music
thing.
is meant to do.
But with a lot of these bands now, whether it's horror or whether it's Slaves, or any kind of rap equivalent, they all own a piece of that. They all got influence. I mean, I know some of these rap guys nowadays. They were into Linkin Park. They love Cannibal Corpse. They were into Metallica.
Right. Okay, straight away. If you're into Linkin Park, then straight away, then there's a problem.
Not necessarily, because you know what? If they're reinterpreting it in a certain way, and it's not sounding like that, if you're not into them, then that's fair enough. But if they're doing it and we're listening to the new kids doing it and going, oh, no, it's not really authentic, is it? It just gives a little opening for kids that are, you know, your daughter's age and older, just to be invested into that sound, into that genre, and then look deeper.
Okay. Yes and no. Yes and no. You know. Mm-hmm. And so I did recently. I've told you about this. I've told you about this. You know, I've never been into Bob Dylan ever, but suddenly in the last 6 months, something happened where I started to understand it.
Right. Obviously, there's a big difference between Linkin Park and Bob Dylan. You know.
Yeah. But here's my point. Suddenly, I was like, I never really got this before. You know, it was like, and yet it's drawn me in completely. And I thought, I wonder if Heidi, you know, my daughter, would feel the same. I was interested just to see if she would feel the same. So one day she's running around, fucking on, doing her thing, whatever it is. And I'm like, Heidi, I want to play some stuff. She's on the iPad, right? And she's like, yeah, like taking no notice of me, just like, yeah, what? And I'm like, I just want you to listen to some stuff. So I put on Tambourine Man or something. And it's maybe, I don't know, 2 bars into it, and she just puts the iPad down, and just starts staring into space.
Well, that tells you everything.
The entire time through that song, and I'm like, okay, it still works.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Like whatever he was doing then, it creeps into you.
What's the biggest band that heralds a sign of protest? Then, what in your mind? What do you mean? A sign of protest? Like,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
for the younger audience. What would you say would, because you can't. Yes, there's a lot of.
There's
an audience for Bob Dylan, but I'm saying, like, what about now?
I think the point he's making is that he spent so long perhaps not appreciating Bob Dylan, and only later in life has suddenly the sound come through, and he's got and he's clicked into it for whatever reason, and you know, with Heidi appreciating it, it's like these songs that he wrote 50, 60 years ago still resonate and still work on fresh ears.
Yeah, exactly. And they connect. I'm not talking about a protest thing. Okay. I'm talking about as a musicality, you know, the songs. Do the songs creep into this little gal as much as they creep into this guy? And they do.
Some guys say he was the first rapper. You know, Bob Dylan was the first rapper.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I think I had the same with Leonard Cohen. I never really felt Leonard Cohen before. I appreciated his voice. And then I went to see him at Earl's Court. My stepmom is a massive, massive Leonard Cohen fan. And you know, this is a man who Elvis loved. And this is a man who has written poetry, and I think he won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and has released however many 15, 16 albums. And I went to see him at Earl's Court, and he has a massive band behind him, brilliant players. And obviously, because his voice is so famous for that low gravel that is still in tune, The sound was brilliant. The mix was brilliant. You know, they just had the best. You just knew they had the best people there because you're inside. We're in Earl's Court, and it was heaving, and you could hear
awesome
every single rasp and ripple of his voice. Right,
Yeah.
beautiful. And then it was only after that in June. I didn't really know his stuff, and my stepmom said, you know, listen to Bird on a Wire and stuff, and actually, you know, you can tell he's off on his own fucking cloud, man, and he always has been. He was with David Bowie, was off on his own cloud. Freddie Mercury was off on his own cloud.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan was off on his own cloud. Eminem was off on his own cloud. These guys,
right.
they're on a different tier.
Sorry, finish. Wrap up what you're saying, but
So-
I've got a point here.
Yeah, so then he you know, he died shortly after, and he wrote a letter to a great friend of his, like weeks before he went, saying, you know, I'm on my way. I know it's coming. It's on its way. I think he quoted T.S. Eliot, which is there's a quote from T.S. Eliot which says, I have seen the faithful keeper, and he is by my bed, or some fucking morbid
he's
shit
like-
like that. Do you know what I mean?
He's on his way.
He's there.
Oh, wow.
And he quoted him, and he wrote it in a letter to his friend, and then he checked out, and that was that. But as you had with Bob Dylan, I had a similar, not a reawakening, but a sudden appreciation for all things Leonard Cohen.
Yeah. Okay. So, and this is the thing. What you said something then, which was, you know, there are these distinctive artists, and this is where I think our generation come from. Like when I was a kid, there were artists that were like, you knew who they were within one bar of their song starting.
Yeah.
You knew who they were.
Yeah.
You knew who this song was by.
Yeah.
Just by hearing the first bar. They didn't even have to start singing at that point. But straight away you were like, well, that's Eminem. Or you know, that's fucking Nirvana.
that's Bob Dylan.
Or that's, yeah, but
Music.
like, you can tell. Nowadays, that doesn't exist.
That's a very good point. 99%
Nowadays-
of songs start, and it could
and
be
you-
any
you- it
20
could be anyone.
artists.
It could be anyone. You don't know anymore. Because I think it's become more acceptable to, what's the word? Conform than it has been to rebel. And that's the danger in art. Is that now it's become more popular to conform than it is to rebel. And that's the problem.
I have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker. That was the quote. Sorry, floating back around. Just
Going back to
attention to detail.
You're a lyrics man. This is my segue
Sorry,
moment.
cocksucker.
Yeah.
Right, I won't say it.
Sorry, I jumped in.
Right.
I tell you what, let's talk about movies.
Okay, so picking up from that, Truman Show, classic, top 20, always loved it. The original, well, apart from George Orwell's 1984, which Sarah rightly pointed out, the original kind of Big Brother
Yeah, Big Brother's
piece
watching.
of creative intellectual property. Watched it last night and studied it intensely. Lots of things to talk about this film. Jim Carrey's, you know, great performance. We've known him as the funny man. Peter Weir, brilliant director. Gallipoli, amazing Hollywood stalwart. And it's a really interesting blend of knife edge, kind of like, oh my God, is this guy going to lose his mind? And like, you know, there's something quite frightening about the film.
Yeah.
And yet also in moments it's very funny, and you're laughing at the situation, and you're laughing at all these people watching him, and this, you know, this man sort of trapped in this cage and just unable to get out. But for me, and I won't ramble on about too long, there was several moments in the film which just, you know, I always come away. You always look back on a film or a TV show and certain scenes will come to your head. If I say Boogie Nights, you're going to think of a scene. If I say Pulp Fiction, you're going to think of a scene. And for me, it's the very last fucking shot of the movie, of The Truman Show, right? And throughout, particularly the third act of the film, we're cutting quite a lot away to the real world. People in bars, two old ladies on a sofa, a bunch of people all tuned in to Truman Burbank and his life. And there's two guys who work in a parking lot, right? And they run throughout the entire story.
Oh, I know what
Right?
you're going to say.
Yeah, and there's two, and they run throughout the whole story, and
Yeah.
they're watching it like everyone else. And the final scene of the movie is that Truman Burbank at this point has realised that he's in a world, and he's said a great goodbye and bowed, and his girls come running, and Ed Harris has got a close up on him, and he knows it's over, and it cuts to these guys in the parking lot, and they're like, oh, you know, wow, that was amazing, that was full on. And then there's a little beat, a moment, a pause, and one of them just goes, hey, let's see what else is on, and they change the channel, and it's just the final point of that we don't care, like we don't give a shit. We're on to the next thing.
On to
We're
the
like,
next thing.
It doesn't mean anything to us because that's the world we live in now. And that
that's
movie came
fucking
out in
great.
1998, right? And so to be that far ahead of its time, it's a fucking masterpiece.
Do you know what? There's another.
Love that film.
Yeah.
There's a film. It's not that well known film, or it's that. Not a lot of people like it. It's not like a classic or anything. I even can't remember the name of it. Oh, fucking hell. What is
Debbie
it?
Does Donkey Town.
Yeah. No, that's a classic. No, it's got the guy who's oh fucking hell. They do the cornetto Hot Fuzz and all that.
Naked Gun.
No, Hot Fuzz. What's his name?
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright. Who
Sean
are the
Penn.
actors?
Sean.
They do the Star Trek film.
Sean.
No.
Of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead.
What's his name? What's the actor called?
You know the one I mean.
Of course.
He's in Mission Impossible.
Of course, I know his name. Oh my goodness, what is his name? Shaun
We
of the Dead.
interrupt this broadcast
Hot
for
Fuzz.
a slide. Come on.
Shocking, isn't
Fucking
it?
hell, I can't remember his name.
How shocking.
But that
is
happens
early
all the time.
onset.
As soon as somebody forgets a name, you go, oh, now I've got it. What is it?
Name?
Oh,
There's anyone who's listening right now is screaming his name.
Yeah.
You wankers!
right on a postcard.
Yeah. Drop it in the comment
Dickhead.
section.
Yeah. Dickhead.
Anyway.
Anyway, back to the point. As you was.
Well, now I've
What's
forgotten the
film?
fucking point.
What's the film that you watched with
all right, I can't remember the name of the fucking film. Basically, he meets an alien.
Paul?
Paul. Right.
Paul.
It's not a big celebrated film or anything, but there's a very funny moment in that. Right at the end, where they do the whole ET bit.
Right, I know the bit you mean.
Where Paul has to go home, and they do the speech, and then he lifts off, and there's this big fucking fanfare music and all that, and then it ends, and the ship's gone off, and they're all stood there like looking up at the sky, like oh, and then sort of the music fades out a bit.
Yeah.
The wind stops, and they're all like, oh well. That's that then. Because it's the thing.
Great.
At the end of ET, you have the whole big thing where he gets on the fucking ship and he goes and everyone's like, oh, and everyone's crying and the whole fucking thing. But then you never think about, well, what happens after that? Like,
Monday morning, straight to work.
Monday morning, my pals are back.
Yeah. Shit's not even in the
Can't afford the rent.
shit. Yeah. Shit's not even
Man's
in the,
knocking.
shit's not even in the news. Like what did I see?
Yeah. Like, what now? Like,
It's that return to normality, and that's
Yeah.
real life, and it's funny because it's true and it's real, so it works, and
It
films like
works
that
in
works,
that,
and
where
endings like that.
Talking of real life, it's its parody. We saw this film last night, the Night Crawlers.
oh, Nightcrawler.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
I jumped in. You know me, I don't know my movies, all right? So I literally get turned on by music.
Don't worry about it. That's what me and Trip know. We know.
Right. I don't know my movies, right? But you guys turn me on to films that are just like, okay, you need to check this.
Yeah, we don't fuck about.
Yeah. Now this film,
Cineasts.
this film you saw about 6 times to reach a
I think
conclusion. of what it was about.
last night was like my 5th or 6th
Definitive
time. I watched it. Yeah.
So I felt like I was already ahead of the curve in terms of my understanding of it because James was breaking it down as we went along. That film is going to be a cult.
well, no,
classic.
It is a cult
I
classic.
suddenly
Cult
realised
classic,
what that film was about last night. I suddenly went, you always say
Yeah.
there's the story, but then what's the story underneath the story? And then last night, I'm watching it and I'm like, fucking hell, I suddenly get what this film's about. And it's about capitalism. He is the worst aspects of capitalism. Like, he will do whatever it takes to get to where he needs to go. He will fucking
It's unbelievable.
film his partner dying
Yep.
in order to make more
That's
money
exactly it.
to get higher up. To like, he don't give
It's
a
Citizen
fuck.
Kane. You know, it's
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
shit like that.
Yeah.
One flew on a cuckoo's nest.
And he wins at the end. And then, here's the thing. Here's the downside of it. Because everyone's waiting for a happy ending. And it's like, no, this is capitalism, mate. It's kill or be killed.
There's no happy ending. To
There's
this.
no happy ending in this. It's like, you either fucking take over or you're a slave.
Yeah.
That's it. You know?
great film. Definitely one of the best films in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah. And no, but not one mention at the Oscars.
No, and that's cool
Like-
because,
Like, how did he not win a fucking Oscar?
It's
for that
ridiculous.
role?
How
or
did-
even get nominated?
how did The Truman Show not get nominated?
Yeah.
Tell you another good film to watch.
Yeah.
We shouldn't say long ago.
Go on.
The Artist.
Hey, listen, that script was 55 pages. It was
Never
kicking
seen
around
it.
Hollywood. Oh, you got to watch The Artist.
Never seen
55-page script. A feature film script would be usually 90 to 120 pages. This page was 55 fucking pages because there's no dialogue. Right, so it's just stage direction. It's just action. and it is a masterclass in storytelling. It's funny, it's original, it's witty.
And I could watch it again.
It's
well.
just
It's
perfect.
so
it's just a formidable piece of work.
Really?
You've got to watch it.
I haven't seen it.
You've
No,
gotta
Trips
watch
has
it.
been going on it for ages. Like, watch the
It's just
artist.
lovely. It's just you just go, that was lovely. It's it's not going to change your life.
But it's like that's a well put together film.
Exactly.
We won't tell you the ending because
Yeah,
it's
don't tell me the
so
ending.
rich.
But
It's
those
awesome.
films, Nightcrawler, Drive, Whiplash, those are the films now which are exciting. That's that. I don't know what the term is coined as of yet, but that will be a wave in itself.
Do you know what I think about what's about to happen in Hollywood as well? Because the old school's dying.
Yeah, they've killed
The old
themselves,
school's
right?
dying, right?
They're killing
Because
themselves.
suddenly it's like, no, you can't rape fucking actresses anymore. So they're all going to bail out, right? And here's what's going to happen. Exactly what happened in the 70s. A new school will take over.
Of course.
And who were the new school back then? Scorsese, Spielberg,
De Palma.
Lucas, De Palma.
Yeah.
Fucking, proper
The cream
new,
is rising.
Yeah.
The cream is rising.
And so I think, a lot of people are going, oh, it's the death of Hollywood right now.
Yeah.
I'm going, do you know what? No, it's the rebirth of Hollywood.
Let's
You're
talk
about-
about Whiplash briefly, because
Okay,
you're
go on.
both musicians, and I used to be a musician, and
But okay, I can't, as a musician, and I've done sound and I've done live PAs for years and years and years. I can't watch music films without cringing a little bit,
Right.
Because I see every
of
mistake.
course you see every crack, every nook, you see everything,
I'm
every
like,
little.
That's not how you
they wouldn't
set
do
up
that.
mics.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Why have you got that bit of gear there? That doesn't do
But-
anything. So it always draws me out of it. But it's still a great film.
So are you saying? I thought you were going to say, but like I didn't see any cracks in that. So could you see some of the?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
yeah.
okay.
But you ignore that. I go. Yes, you wouldn't have that. It wouldn't be set up like
What,
that.
that cymbal wouldn't be there, that snare wouldn't be
Yeah,
there.
like
or-
you can't play a theatre like a 2,000-3,000 seater venue without any mics.
Sure,
Yeah, it's like.
but we give them poetic license.
Well, we give them poetic license,
of course, because it's
Yeah.
a movie. But in terms of a story
Oh, it's
and
fucking great. It's
performances
awesome.
and the themes of the movie
Yeah.
and the way certain bits are handled. I
Yeah.
mean, I think probably one of my favourite sequences in a sequence in screenwriting term, which I've always found quite interesting, is a series of scenes. So we'll call a sequence a series of scenes where it's almost like a little story within the story in itself. So it can be something as trivial or innocuous as someone going to the shop and then they get robbed and they come back and they've got to tell the person that they got robbed. And that'll feed into the bigger story and a bigger purpose. One of the best sequences in Whiplash is when he is desperately trying to get to the rehearsals, right? And I think he forgets his sticks,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
he's
yeah.
fucking looping
What
out,
a
and he
what
goes
a
back and he gets his
footnote.
sticks,
It really is, yeah.
and then he's in that car crash, right? And he's battered, and you just the way they shoot the crash, the car comes out of fucking nowhere and
yeah.
flattens the car, and he's out there. And I think a dude comes running up and says to him, like, "Go get you to a hospital, man."
Yeah, yeah. He's
And,
like,
and you're still spun out as the viewer, and he's like, and you're like, he's gonna go, man. All he cares about is getting to the, and you're there like, Jesus Christ, and you fall in love with him at that moment if you haven't already.
That's right.
And then I think the ending is just absolutely superlative. It goes, you try and give when someone watches a film, they want to see, right, what they expect to see. So they want the couple to get together, or they want the good guy to win, or they want the enemy to die, right? You're waiting for that moment, but good writing is when you give them that and then you give them something else on the end of that, right?
Yeah.
That's good writing.
Yeah.
Great writing is when you give them something else and you give them something else and then you give them something else and then you just slap them.
Oh
in the
yeah,
face,
there
right?
were a lot of in that last scene. There's a lot of moments like that.
Exactly, where he's trying to get him to do, I think they're the 100s.
Oh yeah, just
So-
by looking
yeah,
at each
yeah,
other
yeah,
like
yeah.
G'ing each other along.
And he's just
in that
fucked him
sense.
over because he's made the band play a song that he doesn't know. So he storms off and then he sees his dad and he comes back on and he sits back down and he starts
Yeah.
playing. And at that moment, his adversary, i.e. the bald guy, J.K. Simmons, who won the Oscar, suddenly he's like, you're back and you're about to do what I thought and I told you you'd never be able to do. And
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
about to fucking do it. And suddenly he changes a level and he's suddenly on his side. And he's like, okay, come
Yeah,
on
he's
then.
like,
Come on.
oh, look.
Yeah, here it
Okay, here we go.
Here it is. Here it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
You're awake.
Exactly, you're
Yeah,
awake, and they
yeah.
have become suddenly conjoined.
No,
Where they-
it's that bit when he hits the cymbal comes down, and suddenly J.K. Simmons comes to shot, and he puts the cymbal back up, and he tightens it up.
Badass.
And he like strokes his chin. He's like, it's like, oh, okay.
phenomenal.
And then there's another shot which is really telling, because when he goes to walk out, his dad's there to meet him.
Yeah.
And his dad sort of goes, puts his arm around him. He's like, oh, son, you tried your best or whatever. And he's like, no, I'm going back.
Yeah.
And he goes back and he starts doing it. and he's like doing this drum solo, and then it cuts to his dad looking through the like the open door.
Yeah.
You see his dad just sort of watching him, and his dad's like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
Like,
Incredible.
He didn't believe in him before. He was just like, "Oh, don't you tried your best," and then he went back and did it, and then his dad's like, "Oh my god, he's the real fucking deal."
Incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible.
And it's just like all these things crescendo at the end.
Yeah.
Of this film.
And you are left with a slap face. That's what I love when you're like, what the fuck? That was incredible.
Like one slap, no,
Yeah.
we're getting even another
bang,
slap.
bang, bang.
I think there's an athleticism in all of our arts. Like when you see something like that in a film, and it really relates with you, and you're like, shit. Like I want that. I want to do that. That's a bit of me, because you want that turn of events. I remember like there was a scene in the film where there was a bit of humanity with the teacher, and he was in a dirty old dive bar singing jazz songs, and he's relegated to doing that. And I guess the student, I don't remember his name as the drummer, but he was sitting there with him, and it almost became relatable.
Yeah.
I think that was a restoring confidence, knowing that he's only human.
Right.
Although it was a false sense of that was the precursor for what became the heads-on battle.
Definitely.
It's
and
that
it's a fractured relationship.
He was playing. He knew.
Yeah.
He already knew at that point. He
Yeah.
was pretending to be nice to him to get him on stage so he could embarrass him.
So he could fuck him over.
He could fuck him over in front of everyone.
He always harboured that
Vendetta.
grudge.
Yeah,
but those
yeah,
moments, we're talking about those extra hooks, those extra punches, those haymakers, they're in all your favourite films. The head in the box at the end of 7.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
8
fine.
Mile, when Eminem suddenly turns around and he says, yeah, I am what you say I am.
Yeah,
I'm a white boy, and my
yeah.
mum does live in a trailer.
Yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, whoa, he's used it against him. Those moments are, and you try to bury those moments so nobody sees them coming. So when they hit, it's that, that rush of endorphins as a viewer, and you've watched the movie for over an hour. So
You need to put the mic to your mouth when you talk.
What, like this?
Yeah, because otherwise people can't hear what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, we'll bring it close. I can do it smooth.
Can I make a segue into a little bit more about you? Because let's get into the nuts and bolts of the script writing thing, because over the last 3 or 4 years, you've been refining your art and developing it, and you're now an established writer. Not a lot of people may know this, because some of the people that are listening to this will know you from a very different walk of life. Now, we know how much rap influences your writing, like in terms of dialogue, conveying a message. What is it for you, and in your writing process, what makes a definitive script? It's a really big question, but how do you craft a script?
Well, you always have to know you're going to love whatever it is that you're going to write or you're taking on, and that's a really quick decision. That's you just know, because the material and the subject matter is something you feel that you can expand on, in a world that you want to spend time in, because ultimately you're going to commit 3, 6, 9 a year, 2 years of your life to writing these drafts and these outlines and treatments that come before the drafts. So you've got to love it, and because you should know. Well, that's presumptuous maybe, but I know my tastes, so I know what I can get my teeth into. And then from there, it's you got to have. It's a funny thing. Some people say that some screenwriters are like architects, and some people say that some screenwriters are like gardeners, and the architects like to build the story before they write the script. So you go away, you do an outline or a treatment, and you build it scene by scene, so you know exactly what you're doing, and then you're just kind of like filling in the dialogue and the action. You still have to, weave it together to make it a composition. And then there are the gardeners who just like to chuck the seeds out and just see what happens, and go in slightly blind. And plug into what James would talk about, which we can get to, flow state, and go where the wind takes you. And a lot of great writers do that, and a lot of great writers are architects. So there's no rhyme or reason.
And what's your preference?
Either or. And so more and more, you have to work to an outline and a treatment. But you can go pretty off-piste from that if you get a better idea when you're in the middle of a scene or in the middle of an act, and you suddenly think, well, fuck, this is the way I need to go with the story. Or moments will only reveal themselves very often with me when I'm right there in the scene trying to work out what the next fucking thing the person's going to say or do. And suddenly I'll go, of course, this is what he does. And I never would have come to that conclusion just looking at a story from the outline stage.
Right.
So you have to be in the trenches until you can hear the gunshots.
Yeah.
So, and then from there, it's just making sure that you follow your North Star, which is there's some basics in screenwriting that you learn quite early on, and you realise that are completely entwined into what makes a good story, and characters wanting things, and a certain shape to it, and a certain pace to it, and making sure you get tone right, and making sure that it's original, and that you it's exciting to write. I think you got to. I have to love it. I have to be desperate to get it out of me, and then you just tack it all together, and then rewrite it about 30 times, and pray to God that it doesn't get his butt kicked when you send it into school.
Okay, so yeah, right. So you've written it 30.
You know what I mean? Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, so you've written it 30 times, and it's gone through the mill here in your studio, and you feel it's finely crafted, tuned to how you want it, and you send it over to your agency or the producers. At what point do you have to let the swan be the swan? How do you feel about other people coming into your bubble and telling you, no, change scene to act, and then it doesn't become yours? It becomes
Sure.
other.
But I mean, by its very nature, filmmaking and television making is a collaborative process, because you're going to give it up to a director who's going to shoot it, and you're going to give it up to a whole team who are going to make it. And if you want to just write your own shit, then be a novelist and have an editor and work with the editor, and that's your stories, and that's incredible and amazing. But with screenwriting, it's totally about letting it go, giving it up, knowing which battles to pick, when to stand your ground, and then also knowing when someone's got a great idea and that everyone's pulling in the sleigh in the same direction. So it's cool. You have to work with cool people, and I'm very lucky I do. I work with smart people who love story and have great taste, and that's all you need. And a good script editor and a good producer can turn your really good script into a fucking outstanding script. So I like that personally, and because it's such a solitary process anyway. It's nice because you get to kick it around to other people. Of course, there are times when you get 10 pages of notes and your heart sinks and you think, "Christ, I put through my heart."
God damn it!
Yeah, but then you have to fucking you're reborn the next morning, and you go at it again, and you team up with them, and you take in what they say, and you go from there.
In your bubble, there's a lot of things that I know personally that you really get influenced by, like URL rap battles.
Yeah.
Which again is a total, it's a subgenre of rap in itself, right?
Yeah.
James
having a yawn. James doesn't like it when I talk about rap battles.
Yeah, James has passed his cigar sweet spot now.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at yours.
Yeah,
thinking,
he's scrolling for taxi numbers.
But you fucking
can I get a taxi?
you fucking love it.
I love it. It's
in your bubble. When you're being creative, that's your bubble.
It's combative. It's verbal contact sport. It shows language, alliteration. It shows incredible wordplay. It shows punchlines. It shows real imagination. It's. Hi, can I get a taxi?
Can I get a taxi for trip? Yeah, no, it is his house, but we're just going to send him somewhere else.
But it influences me. But it's not so much it influences me because I think the great films influence me, and great television, and my life, and shit that's around you, and amazing literature. What rap battles does is it expands my vocabulary a bit. And it's just nice to watch when I come up for air, because it's like someone who likes watching boxing.
That. When I come up for air.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, when I come up for air, it's like I want to watch a rap battle, because I can take my mind off it.
I
can just watch it, and I don't then go, wow, this rap battle now makes me want to write a script about.
No, that's right. I get you.
It's more
a stimulant.
It's a stimulant, and it's like watching Planet Earth or listening to Bach or Schubert, or I watch a rap battle because it's. I love rap. I'm very competitive, so I'm very, very competitive by nature. So I like that kind of high stakes.
I love the way that there's dimensions to the MC craft. It's like you've got your rap battles, you've got your mumble rap, you've got your old school heritage rap, and then you've got the more contemporaries, your Kanye's, and this worldly look that we have on rap now.
Okay, go for it.
I'll tell you.
It's an open.
I'll tell you what. I mean, whilst this is a segue, but whilst rap battles influenced me, recently I've seen some shows which have changed the way that, like, how much I appreciate television. And Breaking Bad it took me 3 years to watch it, right? 3 years. 3 years to watch an entire series because I needed to pace myself. I would do an episode every 2 or 3 days and I think about it and I might watch it again and I kind of soak it in. And I finally finished it. And I was, towards the last 6 episodes, I was sort of telling James about...
I remember...
where I was with it.
Yeah, I remember it was like pulling teeth. Like, because I remember when I got to the last season of Breaking Bad, I think me and Lamb did it in like fucking, you know, how long's each episode? An hour or something?
Yeah.
We literally did it in like
48 minutes.
6-7 hours. We watched the whole last season because we just couldn't stop.
That's right, yeah.
We just couldn't stop. It was like, an episode would end and you'd
Oh,
go
yeah.
like, oh, next one. You know.
I'll be watching a season. Would we just, you know,
Yeah. And then with Tripper...
Do you want that?
Yes, I will have
Oh,
that.
no, that's something as well.
No, you won't.
Oh, don't.
No, hey, I'm the real fucking smoker here, mate. Yeah,
It's lovely. I don't want to seem, you know, I'll still give you the dirt. I'd just rather...
dude, this is mine now. Because look, he's just stopped it just to the sweet pot. It's mine. But anyway...
Have a chip.
Yeah, have some fucking hummers and chill out, all right? But, here's what I'm saying.
I'll get my teeth on that one,
Tripper was like this. Yeah, I'm on the 3rd to last episode. It's fucking amazing.
He held in for that one as
well.
well.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, is he going to watch the next one? Yeah, next week. And it's just like, no, you gotta fucking watch it now.
I needed to just be with it, come away, think about it, spend time with what was going wrong with Walter White and that. There's incredible corkscrew last episodes when he's out in the cabin and just the madness. But as a show, you know, it's completely... In terms of the craft of screenwriting, and if you ever have time, you ever want to read a script, read the pilot because it's online. You can just get it as a PDF, and it is incredible, right? You can get a PDF of the Breaking Bad pilot on Google, and it's like I say, it's a 48-page script, and the way that it's written is. You can tell you're reading something very special by the 3rd or 4th page. You're already like, what the fuck is going on? This is crazy. This huge, great trailer bumping through the desert and this guy in his underpants with a gas mask and blood everywhere. And you're straight into the melee. And I think just as a show, there were certain moments, again, just referring back to what I was saying insofar as how you look back on certain moments in stuff that you love and that defines it, be it Ghostbusters, be it Goonies, be it whatever. And with Breaking Bad... there were a couple of moments where I came away just rattled to my core, right? And for me, the tortoise on the head just resting, that Mexican guy in the blood, and that whole sequence with Hank, and when the car blows up, and it blows up,
freaks him out,
and I felt sick to my stomach watching that, and that was the first time it was slap in the face, and it was the headbutt, and
do you know what? It was serious. Like that was when, because I tried starting to watch Breaking Bad a couple of times. And I couldn't get through the first season. I just couldn't do it. And I was just like, this thing's fucking boring. And then I can't remember who said it, but they were like, have you seen Breaking Bad? And I was like, oh, I've watched like 3 or 4 episodes. Yeah. I just can't seem to get into it. And they were like, dude, get through the first season. Just get through the first season.
Yeah, people said that to me as well.
And then once you get into the second season,
that's right.
And so I was like, okay. And then when the fucking tortoise with the head on it blew up, after that, I was like, okay, I'm in a whole new fucking world now.
Yeah, totally.
I've never seen anything like this.
It was incredible.
I'm in.
It was so visceral and dark. And and you just need those moments. And more with long-running drama these days, because we live in the instant gratification era where people, you know, swipe and fast food, they know what they want within an instant, or so they think. You have to. So it's like a good book. Sometimes you pick up a good book and you need to read 100 pages before you suddenly have the lock-in moment. Yeah. And with Breaking Bad, it was. And then the plane crash. And then there's a scene. There's a scene as well where there's a massive turning point in the series where he lets Jesse's girlfriend die when she's ODing, right? And you're like, he's going to help her. Of course he's going to help her. And he's watching her, and then you're like, he's not going to help her. He's not going to. And the cogs just turn on the character, and you're like, okay, we've gone up a gear now. Like,
my other favourite scene. My other favourite scene in that turning point is when he's shopping, and he sees that guy buying.
It's great.
Buying the fucking stuff to make meth with, and he's like, "Why the fuck are you buying that?" And he starts going through the fucking. He's like, "That's a load of shit." Yeah. And then he comes outside, and the guy's like with his boss or whatever, and he's like, "That's the guy," and he sort of walks up to him, and it's like this hard fucking Mexican burly looking guy like walks up to him and he just looks him up and down, and he's like, stay out of my territory.
Yeah.
Saying, and the guy just backs away.
Yeah.
And he's like, fuck me, he's the Don.
He's
like,
the Don.
He's the Don now.
He is the Don, dude.
He's found his voice.
It's incredible. It's
Do you know what I
incredible.
mean?
And the peripheral characters in that. I mean, Saul Goodman is
God.
one of the great characters ever written. You would every time he came on screen, you'd just be waiting for him to open his mouth, because everything about him you liked, you bought. He was funny. He was a cliche, but he wasn't a cliche. It was absolute perfection. And I only realised the other day that Saul Goodman is it's all good, man.
Yeah, it's all good.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
The same way that I didn't get that Black
good, man.
Mirror is called Black Mirror because your phone, when you look at it, is black.
Yeah, no, but no, here's the thing. Inverse, look, check it out, it's deeper than that. No, wait, it's deeper than that. Inverse reflection shows the imperfections. So when you look at this is why if you look at yourself in a black screen, it's like you see all the imperfections in your skin and stuff.
Jesus.
So you see the ugly side of reality.
That's awesome.
That's why it's Black Mirror. It's the ugly side of society.
That is awesome.
How fucking good is that?
Awesome. That's just
so
too
good.
much for my fragile mind.
Yeah. It's good, huh?
But anyway, yeah, just to summarise, Breaking Bad, it's an obvious one, but it's a benchmark in television.
Well, there's a reason why it's so... everyone loves it.
Absolutely. And it's just... And the story, the funny story...
So talk to me. I sent you that thing the other day about Jurassic Park.
Oh, it's awesome.
Where he broke it down.
Oh, it's awesome.
And he told you what it's really about.
It's awesome. Tell Kella.
Yeah, tell me about
So
this.
there's this guy, and he basically went, I'm going to break down to you, it was about the lost art of the blockbuster, and why blockbusters don't resonate with people as much as they used to. So he took Jurassic Park, and he said, I'm going to take Jurassic Park, and I'm going to break it down into what it's really about.
Okay.
So we started to break it down, and you sort of go, well, it's a story about a guy and a woman. They go into, you look at the story, and then these dinosaurs get out and they run around, and they chase each other and stuff.
He wants me to go and get him a drink.
Well, he wants
What
to
am
go
I,
and
the
get whiskey.
fucking footman?
I'm listening.
Can I ring a bell?
I'm listening to his story.
And I'm not?
Dude, I can sit here
You've seen
and talk to my fucking self about it. I'll just sit here, you guys go off and have a cigarette outside. Like, yeah. So, actually, no, now it's weird.
Tell me.
Tell him. I'm still listening.
Just bring the fucking bottle.
Bring the whiskey.
Bring the bottle and the water. Yeah, bring the whiskey. Right, we're drinking whiskey as well. Okay, so whiskey and cigars, you can't go wrong.
No, you can't.
Whiskey and Cuban right, 12-year-old Scottish whiskey.
Yeah.
And fucking Cuban cigars.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong.
Winner,
You
winner.
can't- and,
Chicken
you
dinner.
Sorry, as you was, Jimmy. Sorry.
All right, so
Maybe start from scratch.
right. So this guy takes Jurassic Park and he breaks it down into what it's really about. What's his name? I can't remember the guy's name now. It's like Mike Hill or something like that. He's on YouTube. Going, I'll tell you what. Type into YouTube if you're still listening.
Sorry.
Is anyone out there?
It's really like,
KLC Radio. Talk radio. It's time coming up to 4 a.m.
who's that man with a lovely voice? It's Annie Lennox.
Very good.
Anyway,
This dude.
so go on to YouTube and type in The Lost Art of Blockbuster. The Lost Art of the Blockbuster. And you'll come up with this guy. He's called like Mike Hill or Martin Hill or something like that.
Yeah.
And he breaks down movies. And he broke down Jurassic Park about what it's really about.
Right.
And you start watching that thing and you're like, go on then. By the end of it, you're just like, oh my fucking God. I
Meta.
never even saw half of what that film was about. Like,
So with that in mind, as you say, a film is, it's about whatever, you have its top line, what the story is, and then the question apparently they ask in film school is, what's the film really about?
yeah,
right?
yeah.
What's
Like the
story?
top line of Jurassic Park is, well, they go to this place and there's dinosaurs there, and the dinosaurs get out, and then they have to survive, and then they survive, and then they get away, and it's all good. That's like the top line story.
But the real narrative.
But the real story is something completely different.
So what was Jurassic Park's then?
Oh
does
my
that
God!
give away too
Well,
much?
dude, no.
I think you should watch it.
It's so deep. But this is the point that this guy was saying was this film resonates on such a subconscious level. This is why everyone loves it. You know, because there's a story being told underneath, which is 1,000 years old, and we all know it, and we all feel it, but we don't know we're seeing it, and it goes into the heart, and it goes into the back of the head, and like the frontal cortex is just seeing CG dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But
I know what this
subconscious.
It was a bad idea, but we're having to deal with it anyway. It's like with a lot of things that goes on in society. It's like on the.
Wait a minute, you talking about Jurassic Park?
Yeah.
No. It's to do with God. It has to do with the devil.
Really?
Yeah, it has to do with loss.
It's so meta, man.
It's so deep. It's so deep.
When I think of Jurassic Park, what I think is, it was a disaster waiting to happen. We went along with it because of intrigue.
No, you're still working on the upper level.
Okay.
It goes way deeper than that. It goes way deeper than that.
So with that in mind, saying that every film has a top line and then there's a whole other story, a message beneath it. Not necessarily a message, but there's, what is the film really about? It's themes. And someone pointed out that Ghostbusters, masterpiece, classic, right, is about a bunch of guys who club together to stop the city's ghosts overflowing.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
What's the film really about, though? If you look at Bill Murray's character and his storyline, if you look at the rest of the characters, if you look at what the story represents, what's the story really about? Seven is about a serial killer who's killing, in accordance to the 7 deadly sins, right? But it's about life and death. It's about retirement. It's about a marriage that's going wrong. It's about a load of stuff on a deeper level. A city in the grips of this killer. It's about so many different levels. But with fucking Ghostbusters, and then there's a similar thing on YouTube as well. It has no bottom line to it. And people are trying to grasp it. Well, you could kind of say that it's about like capitalist greed because at one point the city get involved. But again, they're reaching. Because with Bill Murray's character, again, nothing... he's a bit of an arsehole, and he stays a bit of an arsehole,
so
right?
There's a great... talking about the capitalist thing in Ghostbusters, there's this great bit where they decide that, they've been chucked out of the university, and...
I know the bit you mean.
Yeah, and Bill Murray goes like, we could go into business for ourselves. And Dan Aykroyd goes, what, you mean like the private sector? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, no, I've tried the private sector. They expect results.
Yeah, very good.
It's so good.
Right.
Yeah.
But the movie has no bottom layer to it, really. You can't say, well, it's a Star Wars, Indiana Jones, obviously Jurassic Park, Jaws. These films, they all have other things going on, themes to them. But there's no themes to fucking Ghostbusters.
But I tell you something, this Nightcrawlers thing.
Still love it, though.
Oh, yeah, but I know that's an interesting point. I'm going to have to think.
Like, what's the movie about,
but
dude?
The other thing as well. You've heard about Indiana Jones and the
Temple of Doom?
No, the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Somebody pointed out once. I think it was on like the Big Bang Theory or something. Someone pointed out that if it's the only film that if you took away the main character, the result would still be the same. So. The Nazis were after the Ark, and they wanted to open it, right?
Right.
What happens at the end of that film? The Nazis have the Ark, and they open it. So if you took away the main character,
it would still happen.
The Nazis would still get the fucking Ark, and they'd still open it.
It's interesting, and perhaps why it's maybe one of the weakest of the three, because I think Temple of Doom was the one for me.
Temple of Doom.
I love Temple of Doom.
Classic.
Dude, a lot of people see the Temple of Doom as like the Return of the Jedi of that series.
Yeah.
They don't take it seriously. They're like,
really?
Oh, yeah, they're like, it's a kid's film.
Temple of Doom's
dark.
Dark as hell. The heart and the temple.
Yeah.
And also...
It's like, well, that's not a kid's film. That's like fucking...
And its first act rattles along with the kid and all the sequences in the restaurant.
I think some of the stuff
wicked
now,
film.
when you watch films like that, in hindsight, ages on and... all grown up, you see things very much like, wow, did we used to... We were susceptible to that, you know, 9, 10, 11 years old.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
dark meaning.
Yeah.
You know, darker tones.
Yeah.
And now we got the new Star Wars, which is a fucking embarrassment.
I haven't seen it.
Don't even bother.